Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing, Inc.
The Bahamas could go to a referendum on capital punishment. That's our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Wednesday, July 25. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Nicole Best. Good evening. Bahamians could have the final say on whether capital punishment remains on the statute books rather than leave that decision up to the Privy Council. Attorney General Carl Bethel gave that indication amid reignited public debate surrounding the death penalty, which came on the heels of Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis endorsing capital punishment. Bethel says government believes there has to be some intervention, either by statute or by constitutional amendment, to settle this issue. And he says a referendum could be the way.
A lot of thought has been going into this question of capital punishment. Standard has been set by the Privy Council of the worst, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's always something worse than the worst. So it's a standard, in my view, that can never be met. We feel that there has to be some intervention, whether by statute or by constitutional amendment, to settle this issue. And so that is what we're going to look at. And if it's a constitutional matter, it'll go to the people. If it's merely a statutory matter, well, it'll go to Parliament.
The Attorney General was asked how soon the process can be started.
On who the Bahamian people want to determine their future on an issue like this. Do they want some judges in London to do it, or do they want to have a say on it? I think at the end of the day, that's going to be the question. We as a people have to decide where we want to go on this issue. That would be, in my view, the preferable way to go. Let the Bahamian people decide, rather than a few unelected judges in the United Kingdom.
Staying in the Bahamas, government has started public discussion on its plan to ban single-use plastics and styrofoam. The first town meeting was held to get feedback. We get more in this ZNS Network News report.
Government anticipates banning plastics and styrofoam, as well as the release of helium balloons nationwide by 2020. Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Hubert Minnis revealed at a first town meeting on the issue Monday night that 60 countries have already banned these products. He said due to our geographical location, the Bahamas has received waste from our northern neighbors, and it's now extremely difficult to remove plastic from the environment.
Climate change and plastic pollution are both symptoms of a world that gives priority to overconsumption and convenience. Like other small island developing states, the Bahamas is highly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. Coupled with this, we have the prevailing challenge of finding waste management solutions that suit our small size and growing economy. This government remains committed to ensuring that significant action is taken to mitigate natural as well as human-made pollution, including pollution resulting from the poor functioning and poorly managed dump sites throughout our archipelago.
The Prime Minister also encouraged Bahamians to do their part by reducing their plastic and styrofoam use.
We need to stop throwing garbage on the road and on the beaches and in our waters. And we need to stop dumping garbage on vacant land and in the bushes. Carry reusable bags to the grocery store. Invest in smart plastics and styrofoam alternatives. and support the ban. Government alone cannot solve these issues which affect each and every one of us.
The Bahamas Nature Conservancy and the Bahamas National Trust fully support the government's national ban on plastics and styrofoam.
The government of Antigua and Barbuda is considering a more structured approach to governance through social partnership. And this follows Prime Minister Gaston Brown's recent visit to the Republic of Georgia and his participation in a forum on open government partnership. We get more in this report from Garfield Burford of ABS Television.
Prime Minister Brown says joining that partnership is easier for this country because his government is already committed to those principles. He says it's in a bid for even greater transparency that the government will be creating a more structured avenue to engage more civil society groups in the national discourse.
A formal body comprising members of the government and the wider civil society, and to come up with an action plan, one in which we could agree to certain targets and to work collectively towards achieving them.
He insisted what is needed for more open engagement is a broader base of partners at the table instead of the narrow political dialectics of government and opposition.
The space that we have created for participation has been dominated by political elements within the society, so that every issue invariably is reduced to a partisan issue. So I'm of the view that having this structured approach in which we invite them to participate in the decision-making process, that will help to undo some of the misinformation, the false information, the fake news that our opponents continue to perpetuate and in some instances, utilize to create mischief within the society.
It will be akin to a wider social partnership in which there is active engagement with the trade unions, employers, business community, and other groups. One way in which it will be helpful, he says, is the budgetary process. That's when he gave this commitment.
For this budget cycle, we'll be inviting members of the wider civil society to participate, at least to have their say as to how they think we should allocate certain resources. I have to admit there isn't a lot of discretion, because the nature of government's finances between two budgetary items, salaries and wages, and the payment of debt, they account for 120% of the government's revenue. But I'm quite sure that there's still some scope for some participation, and to broaden public education, because sometimes demands are made that are unreasonable.
This is already happening, the Prime Minister says, at least in a spontaneous fashion. What will be different going forward is a structured approach to facilitate a richer dialogue.
Guyanese are being urged to get qualified to land jobs in the oil and gas sector. Foreign Affairs Minister Carl Greenidge says oil companies cannot invest locally if businesses cannot provide the goods and services they require. He says many foreigners are already seeking jobs in the sector, and Guyanese should pay attention to that while getting themselves ready for oil production. We get more in this Newsroom Guyana report.
Guyana is poised to become a top oil-producing nation, but many of her citizens are not familiar with the oil and gas industry. As such, Minister of Foreign Affairs Carl Greenidge is urging all and sundry to prepare themselves to capitalize on employment opportunities. He explained that individuals and businesses need to be internationally certified so that oil companies operating in Guyana will be more inclined to contract their services.
If you are not to be faced with leaks and problems of fires, which is a big hazard on oil on the decks, then the services that you are acquiring have to be from agencies that are internationally certified. It is not a question of buying something from Puran because he's a Guyanese, or buying something else from Jones, or acquiring the services of someone simply because they're Guyanese. It is necessary to ensure that they are certified.
According to the Foreign Affairs Minister, oil companies will not purchase goods and services from local companies simply because of their origin. He said, like other companies, purchases will be done based on competitive prices and value-added products. As such, he said the practice of buying cheap and selling expensive will not work when it comes to catching a sale from oil companies.
If you buy rope, for example, which is something heavily used by the oil industry, then the technique would be to buy the rope and add to it material enhancement. So, for example, ropes may require binding with steel or whatever names they have. You do things to it so that it's a different product from that which you bought. And the local skills that you use, which would be relatively cheap because they're done here as opposed to the middle of North America, enable you to sell a final product that is cheaper than they could buy if they imported it from abroad.
Minister Greenidge said this advice applies across all sectors, including traditional industries such as mining and agriculture.
Still to come in Caribbean Newsline, incarcerated dancehall artist Vibe Cartels waits to hear whether his murder conviction will be overturned. Stay with us. There's more news after the break.
Join leading media and communications executives as well as climate change experts in Kingston, Jamaica from August 13 to 15 for the Caribbean Broadcasting Union 49th Annual General Assembly. This year's assembly, held in partnership with the CARICOM Climate Change Center, explores the theme, Building Resilience to Climate Change, Business, Technology and Content Options for Caribbean Media. Featured presenters include the Honorable Dr. Rural Reid, Jamaica's Minister responsible for information, the region's Chief Climate Change Negotiator, Mr. Carlos Fuller, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, and the International Telecommunications Union Caribbean Office. And broadcast manufacturers and media services enjoy special exhibition rates at this year's conference, joining premier exhibitor Eutelsat. For more information on discounted rates for delegates staying at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel or flying on the official airline Caribbean Airlines, go to the CBU website or call the Secretariat. The CBU looks forward to welcoming you to this key conference on climate change and the Caribbean media.
The Court of Appeal in Jamaica has reserved its decision in the challenge filed by incarcerated dancehall artist Vybz Kartel and 3 others against their 2014 murder convictions. After defense lawyers wrapped up their submissions on Tuesday, President of the Court's appeal, Justice Dennis Morrison, said the case would get some priority, but he did not say when a judgment would be handed down. Kartel, whose given name is Adijah Palmer, fellow dancehall artist Sean Storm, whose real name is Sean Campbell, along with Kahira Jones and Andre St. John, was sentenced to life in prison for killing Clive Lizard Williams in August 2011. Their lawyers argued that the quartet's right to a fair trial was prejudiced by several factors, including the admission of contaminated evidence during the 17-week murder trial. That evidence included a text message on Kartel's phone, which dominated the final day of the appeal hearing on Tuesday. Fashion Brown of TVJ News reports.
There has been one big question throughout the appeal hearing. When was this message created? We chop up the boy lizard fine fine. Lawyers for the appellants last week said it was created on July 6, 2011. Prosecutors on Friday said it was August 19, 2011. And today, the court heard that it could have even been August 23, 2011, based on the evidence that was presented in the 2014 trial, and more dates.
Including September 30th, which said that there was a modification date and a creation date and an opportunity for the information, the messages to be manipulated.
With so many different dates of the possible creation of what the lawyers called this most material evidence, they argued that this text should not have been put to the jury. Prosecutors last week sought to make a distinction between a file and messages within a file. They told the court that July 6, 2011 was actually the date the data file with the controversial message was created, 6 weeks before Lizard's murder. The actual message, which was in the data file, they argued, was created 3 days after Lizard was killed. But today, the lawyers for the appellants told the court that a detailed analysis of the transcript of the 2014 trial did not note any difference between file and message. The cell phone itself was again under scrutiny today.
We are saying is that the learned trial judge had a question of law to answer for himself. And that was whether or not the evidence had raised a reasonable doubt as to the integrity of the exhibit.
The trial judge in his summation said it has been admitted that the integrity of the phone was compromised.
That is what was relied on in my submissions to say that that was a finding by the learned trial judge that the integrity of the exhibit itself had been compromised. And based on that, the exhibit ought not to have been given to the jury.
Another attorney for Sean Campbell, Bert Samuels, said this case was a test case for police integrity, especially with the revelation that the phone was being used while in custody.
Are texts that were sent on the phone which were not analyzed. The jury did not hear all the texts that came on those phones. They deliberately overlooked many of the text messages and calls. And the law is that the defense should have seen all the calls made on the phones. They just handpicked a few. That's suspicion as to what was not chosen, because the police officer said it was the investigating officer who told him what to look at. That's not how the law is.
In the meantime, President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Dennis Morrison, said that the panel has decided to reserve its decision. He said he could not give a specific date for a ruling. Justice Morrison said there are over 6,000 pages of transcripts and a large number of submissions.
Police in Barbados have launched a major investigation following the seizure of approximately $3 million Barbados worth of illegal drugs aboard a yacht on Tuesday afternoon. Lawmen said 3 people are in custody, and although they did not identify the trio, local media reported that 2 businessmen are among those being questioned. The drugs were found when the Royal Barbados Police Force's drug squad conducted an operation on board the Barbados-registered luxury vessel at the Bridgetown port around 1 p.m. on Tuesday. Up to Wednesday evening, no charges have been laid. Entrepreneurship is described as the act of taking on financial risks in the hope of making a profit. And many would say it is not for the faint of heart. But economies need entrepreneurs for their survival, and you can find these people in any sector, including agriculture and agro-processing. In this edition of Newsline Business, we hear from one of them about the challenges of agricultural entrepreneurship. Anthony Nichols is an entrepreneur. He says he was born to be a farmer. Nichols started farming as a teenager shortly after leaving school. On the prompting of his father, he tried his hands at other vocations, including arc welding and truck driving. But economic uncertainty and his love for the land drove him back in the late 70s to purchase over 50 acres of land in rural Barbados. Nichols grows a variety of cash crops, including yams, sweet potatoes, bananas, and plantains, and he grows sugarcane and coconuts to service his agro-processing business.
Vegetables and so up, down, because you're actually producing blindly because you don't have a ready market. You understand? You hit or miss. So we decided we had the coconuts. I actually planted the coconuts to give me my pension. Because when he was paying for him, things were so rough that you can pay national insurance, even for the workers. Because you produce crops and then you can't get, so somebody say, hey, take out the workers' money. But there's nothing to take out. Because where you produce, you have to dump. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't qualify, didn't put enough payments for myself, so I decided, look, plant these coconut trees to get a pension. So that's how it started. Then as I told you, in the 60s, I used to be in tea and juice. So I decided to go in the mill and get back into tea and juice. Because the little bit at the factory was paying for the tea and it really didn't worth it. So I decided to plant less cane and go in. So that's how it actually went.
Entrepreneurs have to have vision, foresight, willingness to take risks, and a sense of social responsibility. For Nichols, his sense of social responsibility lies in his desire to encourage not just local eating, but healthy eating.
They say the sugar content in English potato is much higher than sweet potato. So I don't think we should go back there. You You know what I'm saying? What do you think we should be doing? Looking for 2 or 3 good varieties of sweet potato that taste nice and so. Get out here, experiment at growing hard. They grow them under drip irrigation and fertilize them. Aim for 40, 50 pounds a rod. And then come to the farm and say, look, these are 3 varieties that can yield this, that. And bring the price of sweet potato in line with English potato. And we start importing the English potato. Because English potato, as far as you know, can be only grown once a year.
Entrepreneurship is not without its challenges, and though getting the startup fund to purchase the land was not a major challenge for Nichols, funds for reinvesting was not always easy to come by.
The same bank that I deal with and been dealing with now over 30 years. They want to know, they know a lot about you already and still want to know more. Although they see where you bring when the week comes, they see where you take out. Still is not enough. So you don't worry with them either.
Nichols has some advice for young entrepreneurs, especially those interested in farming.
My first piece of advice is you got to love farming. You don't go in it because you feel somebody else making money with it. I believe before we were born, God knew what He wanted each and every one of us to be. You understand? So you got to search and search and find which is your avenue. When you find which is your avenue, try and live there. Big house.
And ahead in Newsline Sport, West Indies defending their total in the second day-night one-day international against Bangladesh. Stay with us. Sport is next.
This month on Caribbean Passport, we travel the region taking in Grenada Spice Mass, Barbados Crop Over, Antigua Summer Festival, and so much more, all coming up on this station.
Guyanese batsman Shimron Hetmyer smashed his second century to put West Indies in a comfortable position to defend their total of 271 in the second day-night one-day international at Providence on Wednesday. Hetmyer restored hope for the Windies following a batting collapse that left the side at one point reeling on 102 for 4 after 23 overs. He finished on 125 from 93 balls and was ably assisted by Rovman Powell, who perished on 44 before the Windies' batting collapse continued. Rubel Hussain picked up a 3 for 61. Here are the highlights.
Paul came in, hit a boundary, and then feathered one to Mushfiqur. Rubel in the action again. And this brought up Hetmyer's 100. A fine one it was. Devendra Bishu failed to score. Mustavizur getting him to drag one on. Hetmyer just kept going. 2 sixes off Rubel. 22 runs off that over. And trying to keep the strike going, coming back for a tight second. Was found short of his ground, and that was the end of the West Indian innings. 271 all out in 49.3.
Deposed Australian captain Steve Smith will turn out for Barbados Tridents in the upcoming Caribbean Premier League. The CPL said in a statement on Wednesday that the 29-year-old world's leading test batsman will replace Bangladesh all-rounder Al Hassan, who is no longer available for the tournament. Trident head coach Robin Singh said although they regretted Shakib's absence, Smith would add value to the side's lineup. Smith was embroiled in a controversy last March when he was found guilty of ball tampering during the third test against South Africa in Cape Town. He was subsequently slapped with a 12-month ban by Cricket Australia and stripped of the captaincy. While Smith is barred from playing international and state cricket, he is free to play in tournaments outside of Australia. And as such, he turned out in the inaugural Global T20 Canada last month for Toronto Nationals. The CLP runs from August 8th to September 16th, with the Tridents opening their campaign against Guyana Amazon Warriors on August 12th in Georgetown. And that's the sport. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc.
It starts from sunrise, a city filled with an island vibe, music, people, color, friendship, culture, and the warmest of smiles. Come enjoy the unique costumes, pulsating steel pans, exotic culture, exciting fetes, and unforgettable people. Discover Antigua's Carnival, the Caribbean's greatest summer festival, July 27th to August 8th, because the beach really is just the beginning.
Passion for what she believes is unmatched.
So I wanted to get to the point where you can shake me off that perfect piece.
She's a book-off radio host, philanthropist, and motivational speaker.
And I said, I'm going to write you a check for $10,000, which I'm not.
Spirit, soul, and body.
To get them some help through the transition.
I'm Karita D, and you're listening to Girlfriend Get a Life.
This hurricane tip comes to you compliments the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency and the Caribbean Media Corporation. Be prepared. Before, during, and after hurricane hits, keep working phone lines free for important calls.
Again, the major developments of this day. Bahamians may vote in a referendum on whether capital punishment remains on the statute books. And in sport, West Indies trying to avoid a ODI series defeat at the hands of Bangladesh. That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, subscribe to Caribnews.com. For more of our programming, log on to caribvision.tv and subscribe to Caribvision's YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow. But from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching and do have yourselves a very good night.
Thank you.